Show podcast. Hello.
Hello.
It is time for the Wilder Show podcast. I'm Scott. That's Lauren.
Hello. Mm-hmm. I said that already.
Okay. Hello again.
Glad to be here.
Hello again. Hello is what I'm saying.
Hello.
Wilder Show.
Well, let me write that down.
WilderShow.com is where you find us. Podcast at WilderShow.com is how you contact us. Wilder Show podcasts drop Tuesdays and Fridays, 6 a.m. Central Time on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts. I never thought I'd say that phrase. And wherever you get your podcasts, but I'm saying it too.
I was just going to say, if you're feeling a little old and like you need a little, like an update, just start a podcast because then you'll get to say things like the podcast drops on Tuesday and Friday, or subscribe, find us. I mean,
share.
it's an instant
shot of youth,
youthifier.
Hey, I like it. So rate, follow, subscribe, and share, everybody, for when we drop. So it is a Wilder Show podcast, and so let's dive right in. Just briefly, the Trump cabinet looks like it's coming together, and RFK Jr. was confirmed, and that's one that I thought was sort of on the bubble.
Oh, yeah?
I thought, it's the whole vaccine thing and all kinds of things. Plus, he's quite pro-abortion in real life. And he said, well, my job is to implement the policies of the president. We've certainly had people before that have held positions different from the sitting president and have had to then, do the bidding of a president. So it's not everybody in the cabinet is going to agree with the president on everything.
It's not unprecedented.
No, it's not unprecedented. Anyway, so that has come together. Let me ask about pennies. The president wants to get rid of pennies.
Oh,
and
I saw that.
Do you see that?
I did.
And I don't really know what I think about that. They're not, you said they're not really useful. I understand that they cost more than their face value, which is sort of weird.
Cost more to make?
Yes.
Than
they cost like 3.1 cents per cent. And you say, well, that doesn't make sense. No pun intended. That doesn't make sense. So we'll stop doing that. Well, what are you going to do with nickels? Nickels cost 13.8 cents per nickel.
Isn't that odd? I never knew that. Or if I ever learned that, I did not retain it. Well, it does make sense.
One thing is, why don't we just change what they're made of? If they're made of something that is cost more money, make them from something else. But a 1 cent piece doesn't have to be copper, and a nickel doesn't have to be. I don't think it even is nickel anymore. It's something else. But yeah, make it of something else. But I still like having those denominations, unless we're going to go completely cashless. But if the whole point is that something costs more than it's worth, boy, that could apply to a lot of us too, couldn't it? Do away with them. They cost more. They cost more. He costs more than he's worth. I just don't know how you get rid of pennies and don't get rid of nickels. And if you're talking about, I charge something, what does it matter if it's 37? You don't round it up to 40. $38.37. But if I'm charging it, what does it matter? Because the next thing might be 3 cents getting. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't understand what the deal was with that. But actually, according to what I was able to read about it, pennies are almost working themselves out anyway. We've been minting fewer and fewer pennies over the last several years. We don't mint as many as we used to. And they're still out there. But if you do away with them, you still have to get rid of them. They're in circulation.
I don't remember the last time I used a penny.
Oh, yeah?
I don't remember the last time I got one back. I guess that would have something to do with how infrequently I'm using cash at all. If I haven't used one, then I probably haven't had much opportunity to get one back in change either. So I don't use a lot of cash. But I certainly don't use a lot of change. And probably the last time I even had my hand on a penny would have been, finding one in a pocket of a jacket I hadn't worn in a long time or something like that. But I really don't. I have no recollection of the last time I used one.
Well, I like pennies. I like to find a steel penny, a 1942 steel penny. If you find the old pennies that have the wheat pennies, before whatever year it was. So I still like them. But anyway, it looks like they're going away, or maybe they're not going away. Just one of the things.
Add it to the list, man.
Man, he's been busy, hasn't he? If we're down to pennies, he's certainly made lots of changes.
I just meant add it to the list of things that are going away because they're maybe not as useful as they used to be.
Right.
But yeah, you could add it to his list too.
Right. I like pennies. I think they should stay.
Okay, is that a good enough reason for the whole country to keep producing something?
Yeah,
I think because you like having them.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do think that very much. I think that.
All right, moving on. Something else that might be going away. The golden age of remote work seems to be ending. I mean, we know that the president is seeking to end remote work for federal employees. And I want to take issue with something that he said. He said, nobody's going to work from home. They're going to be going out. They're going to play tennis. They're going to play golf. They're going to do a lot of things. They're not working.
So he's saying that if you don't go into the office, he thinks you're just goofing around?
Just goofing around, playing tennis, maybe taking naps.
Well, I mean, it's possible that you could be doing that, but that's not our experience.
No,
I mean, we've worked remotely for
more than a decade.
Yeah,
just over a decade now.
I mean,
more than
you still have to do the work.
You do.
The work's got to be done, and so we work remotely, and I do believe in structure, and
sure.
and the boss gets to decide if that's what is needed. So. In the case of government employees, if they want to bring them back, and working in an office is important for the reasons that the entity or the boss or whoever believes it is, then it is. I mean, that's the way it works. Hierarchically, the boss or the organization gets to make the rules for the people that work for the organization. So if the boss says, we just talked to somebody this week, said, yeah, we're coming back 3 days a week, or doesn't matter which 3 days, but they got 3 days. They want to get cohesiveness again. And I think we've seen reports that say, especially for new hirees, saw something about that.
Yeah, that's true. And I think really at the beginning of the pandemic, when there was already some remote work being done,
right.
We were already remote workers
right.
at the beginning of the pandemic. Had nothing to do with that. We were already in a groove. But I think when everybody went home to work in 2020, a lot of people thought, if we can just do this from home, I think, everybody's going to keep on doing that. Why will employers continue to, build buildings or keep leasing space and heating it and cooling it and, lighting it up if workers can do the same thing from home and, pay their own bills for things like that? But and I think a lot of workers are still kind of, hopeful for that. But like you said, I don't think that is actually going to become a thing. And a lot of Fortune 500 companies like J.P. Morgan, to name one, Amazon, have already called their employees back into the office 5 days a week, much to the chagrin of many of them. So it looks like this remote work revolution that we thought was going to happen is not going to happen. I was looking at this was a column by Kevin Drum, who is an economic blogger. He's been following this for a while. He says he thinks most of the private sector is going to go back to work in the physical sense, that about as much remote work as we had prior to the pandemic, that's probably what we will have after the pandemic. And there are a couple of reasons for this that I can share. Were you going to say something?
No, I was going to say, it seems to me that, first of all, companies are already paying for, we've been around the country and we've seen companies where you have lots of office space. They are still paying for it.
Yeah.
So if they're still paying for it right now, it's not like, well, this will really save the company a lot of money because they get smaller play. Yeah, but they've got a lease that goes through, 2028. So they have those slots. They're already paying for that space. And the other thing is, I think as some companies have been impacted negatively by the economy generally, I think some of them want to find a way to trim their workforce. And when you say, we're going back to 5 days a week, and employees say, but I don't want to go back 5 days a week, you can have some people that will voluntarily get out.
Yeah.
So you're not having to fire anyone. You're just saying, we're going back to 5 days a week, And if 2% of your workforce decides they want to do something else, then that's fine.
Yeah.
You cut your costs, you bring the other people back. You might even say, hey, now we're going to go back to 4 days a week or 3 days a week, whatever. But that might be one of the benefits to a company is sort of a voluntary reduction in force. You don't have to fire anyone. You just tell them the new rules or the rules now post-pandemic. If they don't want to follow it, they don't have to work there.
Yeah, and that is kind of, that fits with a little bit of this. Remote work is bad for new hires and junior employees in particular. So say a company does not have the problem that you mentioned. They don't want to let people go, but it costs them a lot. Turnover costs them a lot. If you spend a lot of money in the hiring process and then you spend a lot of money in the onboarding process, and that does not go well, and somebody doesn't keep their job for a very long period of time, you've got to start that all over again. And it turns out that new employees, this is actually from the CEO of Salesforce, he says new employees do way better if they're in the office, if they're meeting people, being onboarded in person, being trained. If they're at home and they're going through that process, they just don't seem to be as successful. Another survey said that, now this is not just at Salesforce, this is overall, 80% of new hires will quit a job if they had a poor onboarding experience. It's much more likely to happen, if they are welcomed aboard from a distance. So that can cost companies a lot of money. Number two, even workers that admit that remote work sometimes causes more problems than in-person work. So they might still want to do it, but they will tell you it's not always easy. Hybrid work plans can create discordant, unproductive teamwork. That's something. You said we were just talking to somebody about this the other day. There's research that says remote workers are much more likely to report mental and physical health issues and hostile work environments, which I kind of wondered when I first read that. Does that mean that your home is a hostile work environment? Because that might be a separate issue.
Baby won't leave me alone.
Right.
A hostile work environment.
Well, here's another thing, too. 60% of bosses said that if they had to make job cuts, they'd come for their remote workers first.
Yeah.
So that might be a dangerous place to be if you have that choice to make. But then another thing is exactly what you and I talked about with somebody else yesterday. A lot of times a company will they'll execute a hybrid program, but they won't really monitor it, and they won't go to the lengths that you need to make sure it's going to work. If you tell your employees you got to be in the office 2 days a week, but you don't tell them which 2 days a week, then you have people, they come in on one of those days, but then they find out the rest of their team isn't there, and they're in the office working by themselves, which they could have been doing at home, and they're now sitting at their desk alone, shouting at people on Zoom.
Well, if cohesiveness is the point, if the cohesiveness is important, then you can't just have 1 or 2 or 5 of the 2 or 3 or 5% of your team there.
Yeah.
And yet you don't tell them exactly what days they come, what the hours. That's okay. It's okay. Listen, it's a two-way street. It's not a gift from the employee of the great work that they do. It's also not a gift from the employer. They're not just gifting you money. You get money, but it's a two-way street. So, to get the money, this is what we need. If some companies want to be real warm and fuzzy, that's great. That's up to them to decide if they want to do that. If some companies say, hey, it's 5 days a week, it's 8 to 5, that's the way it goes. Shorter smoke breaks and your lunches are, that's their business. And they retain the employees or they don't. It has a way of working itself out.
Right.
I think the pandemic sort of messed things up for a while. And now you have a whole generation of new workers who believe this is normal. That's for those of us who understand the way things were in the workforce, to then work from remote, that was different.
Yeah.
But what about the people that are just coming into the workforce, and they come into the workforce with that as their normal? Now you're notching them up to something that is really foreign to them. I got to drive in. I got to, like every day.
Yeah.
I've got to drive. I got to get up earlier and do my hair and wear a kind of clothes. And I don't really want to do that as much.
It's a real shock to the system.
So I think, for those of us who saw the real life and then saw this as sort of an island.
Yeah.
That it wouldn't last forever. It's going to go back to the way it was before, and companies will maybe they'll hybrid, maybe they'll do it different. But I trust the company to do what is in the company's best interest, and the people will do what's in their best interest, and that really is best for everybody. I saw a thing this week that said 40% of workers said they would take a pay cut if they could continue to work from home. But you know what?
What?
Sort of depends how much of a pay cut, doesn't it? There's a number for everybody.
Well, yeah.
Now we take 50%? No, of course not. Well, okay, if we increased would you come in? Well, absolutely I would. So everybody is a lot more fungible than they're acting like.
Well, sometimes you could take a pay cut too, maybe, if you are willing to look at it as, well, this is how much gas I'm saving. This is how much, this is how much time I'm saving by not having to commute or not really having to get ready to get dressed up to go to an office every morning. There might be a number that you could put on those things.
Live on that.
To make it make
less.
sense.
Yeah, if you're spending that so much money on gas.
Right.
We're just in a part of the world that was gas was $4 and $4.39 or almost $5 a gallon. So yeah, I think probably it'll all settle out, but it won't settle that most people will work remotely. It's not going to happen.
You don't think so?
Yeah.
Well, another thing is, it has been determined that remote workers put in 3.5 hours less per day of work compared to in-person workers. I do wonder about this. This even mentions something that I've thought about before, though. I've worked in offices, and I've also worked remotely, mostly from my home. There is a difference, when you're in the office. You do spend time. Probably not everybody does this. It depends on the kind of work you do and the way that you're situated in that office. You spend time, like for instance, this last Monday, you might have talked about the Super Bowl. You might have talked about the halftime show. You might have talked about the rest of your weekend. During the day, other little things come up. You get up, you take a walk, you get a snack, you go get some coffee. There's
water cooler stuff.
You bump into somebody that you are, in the break room, and you have a little chat there. I do kind of wonder if some of that sort of shakes out. If I know that I don't believe that personally I have been more productive in an office than I have been working at home. Yeah. But again, there's maybe in different situations, if you're measuring someone's productivity, if you've got a staff of 5,000 remote workers, it might be hard to measure the productivity of each individual person, and just know that we've got a better handle on it if they're all here in the office. So it doesn't really matter if you're more productive than he is. You're all coming back. I
don't think so much it is a matter of being in an office or not being in an office. I think it's a matter of structure, and if you have a structure that causes you to be productive, even if you're remote, then you're productive.
Yeah.
And if you're a guy who likes to lean on people's desk and fold your arms and hold your coffee cup up and chat in the office, you probably won't be as productive. So it depends on personal. But I think as an entity, the entity gets to decide.
Right.
If you want to decide, then start your own company and make your policies the way you want. That's your business.
That's kind of the way it is.
Yeah,
in the
that's
end,
the way it is.
Your boss is going to decide.
Renaming the Gulf of Mexico.
The Gulf of America, right?
It has now been renamed the Gulf of America. I got to tell you, I didn't care.
I don't really care either.
I didn't see the Gulf of Mexico as being like our hat to our sombrero tip to Mexico. I didn't see that. Now, it's true, I think, that body of water, that Gulf, has more miles of U.S. or America coast. Actually, technically, America is South and North America. So calling it the Gulf of America isn't really the same as calling it the Gulf of the United States. But don't tell Trump.
Okay.
Because I don't want them to kind of change it again.
They've already started changing.
It's already changed on all the maps. But I was wondering about this, and I thought, I think Obama changed the name of something, and I couldn't remember what it was, and he did.
What's that?
It was Mount McKinley.
And what did it change to?
It changed to Denali. He changed the name to Denali. It was named by a gold, what do you call it? The guys that spit tobacco, had a hat and a pick and an axe. And
prospectors?
Yeah, prospector. It was a gold prospector, and who I guess we say 1830 something. And he named that mountain Mount McKinley for William McKinley, who was president of the United States at the time. And Obama came in. Now, I say natives, it's not pejorative. The native Alaskans called it Denali because it's after some, I don't know, native Alaskan tribe or something. But they called it Denali. And so when Obama made that change in 2015, he changed the name, and I didn't even know this, I didn't remember it, changed the name of Mount McKinley to not Mount Denali, but Denali.
Okay. I did.
And now Trump has said he wants to change it back to Mount McKinley from Denali. I don't really care. But I was just, so Trump is not my point is Trump is not the only one who has changed a long-standing name of something to something else.
Oh, I'm sure that's true.
So people that are upset, if they are, I guess some people are upset about the Gulf of Mexico. I don't really care. I don't care what it's called on a map. I know where it is. I know what it is, and it doesn't bother me either way. And Denali, that's cool too. But name changes. It's still the same fort. It's still the same mountain. It's still the same Gulf. So it's still just the names, I guess, and they could change again. Mm-hmm. Oh, it is time now for Scattershoot.
Let's do it.
Scattershoot, Wilder Show Scattershoot. This is where we, scattershoot. We have things that I don't know, what do you say? It's random things. It's other things. It's
the purple section.
It's the purple section of the USA Today. It's the Today section of your local newspaper. Newspaper kids were the things that, never mind, it's a different podcast. But anyway, it's time for a Wilder Show Scattershoot.
Okay. It is, I don't have to ask you if you've seen anything about this, I'm sure, because it's been all over the place. You can't miss it if you've turned on any morning show or looked at your news feed. A big thing that we're celebrating on Sunday night is the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, Saturday Night Live. In fact, I saw this last week. Of course, The Tonight Show is on NBC.
Right.
And that's Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah, it is.
So I saw that his band,
The Roots,
is the band for Saturday Night Live. And for the 50th anniversary.
Gotcha. Okay.
So he did not have his band with him this week.
They were rehearsing, I guess?
All week long. So he's absent his own band all week.
So who did he have?
He had Paul Schaefer and the Most Dangerous Band, including all the guys
from the old Letterman show.
And Letterman came out and traded jokes with Jimmy Fallon on that. I think it was Monday night on the first night of the week. So, yeah, I have seen it. Of course, if you watch the Today Show, or I know Tina Fey and the other one,
Amy Poehler.
Were on this. So all these people are on Jimmy Fallon this week, the Tonight Show, getting ready for the 50th anniversary. But, yeah, so I was, I guess, 14 when it began.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to watch it when it first came on.
Yeah, is that as content or time of day?
Probably more content than time of day. It didn't last for very long. I think my parents just didn't really
know for sure, didn't trust
know
it
for sure, and so kept me away from it until they decided I was old enough to see cheeseburger.
Yeah, or no hamburger, cheeseburger. Or they determined it's not offensive. It's just sometimes really stupid.
Really stupid.
So we can let our kids watch it.
Okay, so that's something I was thinking of. Now, you and I have been talking about Saturday Night Live things on Mondays for the last 35 years. Right. So I know that you've been a fan too. What I'm curious about, it's a Sunday night, 7:00 Central Time. I think it's still 3 hours long. Be on NBC and also streaming on Peacock.
Okay.
But one thing I'm really curious to see is, our sense of humor and what we find funny as a people, as a nation, changes over the years. And I'm curious to see what I still think is funny, what maybe I'm sure they'll be very careful to maybe not include things that have aged so poorly that they would now be offensive. But what I've really kind of gotten a kick out of is over the years, I would be so excited to show my kids when they were teenagers, maybe something that I remembered that was so funny. When we got the, the internet, when you started to be able to look up any old, any old thing from Saturday Night Live and show them, and some things that I remembered that I still might be rolling on the floor with laughter. They would stare at it like they had no idea, and then they'd look at me like I was crazy.
Yeah.
It wasn't as funny to them as it was to me. So I'm really kind of curious to see how I feel about it now.
When we were kids, I still remember I was with Jack Hodges and Danny Gilmore and me and my brothers. We'd go to Sunday school on Sunday morning, and a little donut time there around that big circular table. And we would stand there, and all we would do is talk about what was on Saturday Night Live the previous night. It was before we had, VCRs or anything. Couldn't tape anything.
Right.
If you missed it, you missed it.
That's right.
And the other thing, you talk about this sense of humor. Two things that were really, really hilariously funny at 11:30 at night are not always things that are hilariously funny at 11:30 in the morning. You get tired and you're staying up late, or you're with a bunch of buddies.
I never really thought about it that way.
And the other thing is, I've looked at some old, and I love Steve Martin, but I've looked at some old stuff with Steve Martin. I go, it is dumb, but it's not really that funny.
Yeah.
Some of the old Wild and Crazy Guys and the arrow through the head and the stuff that we thought. I mean, we howled.
We did
at the time, and I look back at it and I go, yeah, it's not offensive. It's just not that funny.
Maybe it was just funny because at that point we'd never seen anybody do anything
I think
before.
that's probably right. And I was never a big fan of Chevy Chase. I just didn't think he was that fun. I mean, it's super critical, but I mean, I just didn't think he was that funny. The pratfalls and the pretending to be Gerald Ford and making fun of Gerald Ford. Not that I cared about that. I wasn't politically sensitive to any of that kind of stuff. I just didn't think it was that funny. And
your 14-year-old sensibilities were just a little too mature.
I just thought it was not that fun. I loved Gilda Radner. I thought the Rosanna Dana whatever was really funny. I liked when she misunderstood. What's
Emily
the deal about
Litella?
Limited racehorses? And it says, no, it's resources. Oh, never mind. That very funny. You know where she's going, but it's still funny. She was great. I loved her. And, of course, she's attached to Gene Wilder, and that made me love her even more.
Yeah.
And Lorraine Newman and all. I loved all those sort of early days. Garrett Morris. And, of course, John Belushi, and those things were really crazy good. I think it was just that it was so innovative that it had us viewing it. We were viewing something completely different from what we had ever seen before. And I think the fact that it was live was also intriguing.
Yeah.
That anything could happen if we watched this thing live. And that was fun. Then, of course, all the different years of Weekend Update. I think those were my favorite times really were the first skit, to see if it went too long. With obviously the cold start, they call it cold start now, but the monologue, that was important to watch. And then I always would sort of watch mainly the Weekend Update because I knew it was very crafty. And the commercials, sure.
Commercial parodies, those were great.
Yeah, they're great. Do not stare at Happy Fun Ball. Do not look directly at Happy Fun Ball.
Do not look Happy Fun Ball directly in the eye.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, let me bring up something that I think is kind of sad, and it really is. It really is tough. Today is today is Valentine's Day.
Yeah, happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, happy Valentine's Day to you.
Thank you.
I don't want to call any business out or anything, but I'm a little bit sad because Kroger used to really celebrate Valentine's Day, and I don't know for sure, but it does not appear that Kroger is celebrating Valentine's Day anymore.
Of course they are.
What do you mean?
How could they not celebrate
I don't know
Valentine's
how they could
Day?
not. I just know that it doesn't look like it is supposed to look at Valentine's Day.
I'm sure they have all of the stuff, all of the roses and all of the candy
They don't have it.
and all of the balloons and all of that. I'm sure they have.
They don't have that because
have you been inside? Have you?
No,
have
you buy gifts for Valentine's Day and Mother's Day outside the store in a white tent.
No, I was never for that.
That is what. So that's why I think. Are you saying that they are celebrating, but they're doing it now? You have to go inside.
I'm sure they are. Are you saying they're not? There are no tents.
There are not. That's what I'm saying.
They finally listened to me. Nothing.
No, there's nothing wrong.
I love you at Valentine's Day, or you're special to me at Mother's Day, like a big white tent in the grocery store parking lot that you barely even have to get out of your car to.
I'm going to come to the defense of not just men, but I guess some women have done that too. To go to the tent.
I'm going to say I don't think that's true.
Maybe not.
I bet more men go to that tent.
When you receive your whatever it is, do you wonder?
Won't.
Do you wonder? Hey, first of all, I mean, I'll show you some appreciation, but first I want to know, where did you get this? Did you go inside?
No, but we can always tell.
What if? I mean, when you buy a gift for someone. And you say, "Oh gosh, their birthday's coming up," and you go on Amazon and you just say, buy this book, and then it comes to your house and you present it. Does somebody say, "Hey, hold on a second, did you just order this on Amazon, or did you just go really look for this book for me?" And
I think you can still be a careful shopper.
But why
on
can't you
Amazon.
be a careful shopper
still be
in a tent,
shopper,
but not in a tent?
Well.
So let me back up for a second.
Seems...
Hold on a second, just real quick. So you can be a careful shopper, a thoughtful shopper in your house, never going anywhere online on Amazon. But you can't be a careful shopper actually going somewhere. It's just a tent, not inside the building.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. And really, my argument is not even with the people who use the tents. It's with the grocery store for bringing it all out there. Yeah, just make them work for it just a little bit more. How important is your Valentine to you? How important is your mom? I mean, let them work for it. I want to work for it.
They're very important to me.
Yeah.
I'm glad you cleared it up, because I really thought that this meant that they weren't celebrating it.
I'm pretty sure that's not what it means.
But you're saying that, no, in fact, they are celebrating it. They're just making you go inside.
They are. I think they are.
Well, I mean, I guess I feel a little bit better. I'm a little nervous now because, after all, today is already Valentine's Day, and I thought that they simply were not. We're not doing that. While we're talking about this kind of thing, can I ask you, who do you think is more romantic? I have the answer.
You mean men or women?
Yeah. I have a scientific answer. Who is? Now, probably I wouldn't be asking this if you weren't able to guess. The answer is sort of counterintuitive.
Well,
but
yeah.
Who do you think is more romantic, women or men?
Well, like you said, because I would be inclined to say women, but it seems like it might be a trick question. I will say men. Mm-hmm. Men are more romantic.
That is the case, actually.
I do want to know how we're measuring this.
Here we go. Hollywood has made men the embodiment of romance in heterosexual relationships. But whether men are more romantic in real life might depend on how we define romanticism, okay, as well as the cultural and the societal and other expectations that could influence, our behaviors. In American culture, this is a news report. It's scientific. In American culture, there's often the expectation that men plan and pay for the date, buy the flowers, hold the door, pull out the chair. This is from the Kinsey Institute. So they know about stuff like this.
I guess so.
I saw that movie. They know a lot of stuff. They know more than I know. Kinsey Institute at Indiana University. Even as we've seen gender egalitarian tendencies in dating, the executive director of Kinsey Institute at Indiana University says, still there are a lot of gender norms around that. It makes it, in many ways, appear like men do more romantic things because they're expected to. So they're expected to. And so they do. I think of all roads lead to Seinfeld. I think
Yeah.
of the Seinfeld episode with
Yeah.
what's the girl, the dancing girl?
Courtney Cox.
Courtney Cox
Yeah.
is there, and they're pretending to be married because she wants a discount on getting her rugs cleaned. Long story, but they're having. Is
it a rug or a duvet?
Something like that. And so she is there with him, and he says, "To my beautiful wife," they're toasting. To my beautiful wife, and she says, "To my adoring husband."
I remember that. Yeah.
It's not exactly the same.
I think it is.
He says to her, "To my beautiful wife,"
Yeah.
and she says, "To my husband who recognizes that I am beautiful." That's a
Or
little bit
it
different
could
from
be-
saying to my handsome husband. But anyway.
But it says you're a really great guy,
Okay.
right? I mean, if you're
For
calling your
recognize-
wife
yeah, that's true.
beautiful.
Okay, very good.
I'm trying to see the sunshine.
No,
You're
that's good.
Bringing the rain, and
I know.
I'm trying to see
You're
the
trying
sunshine.
to bring the rainbow, and I'm bringing the rain. Anyway, expectations aside, this gentleman from Indiana University, the executive director, says, "I think men are more romantic than they are often given credit for." He is an evolutionary biologist, and he is a sex researcher.
Okay.
So research has it's not suggested, that men may be more romantic than women across the board. But in a 1989 study that developed a romantic beliefs scale, which is widely used now in research to measure how strongly someone agrees or disagrees with romantic ideas, such as love at first sight. Generally, men are more likely than women to endorse the ideology of romanticism and hold romantic beliefs. But listen to the reason why.
Okay.
Other research suggests that men have a tendency to strive harder to establish the romantic relationship, saying "I love you" sooner, and they suffer more from lost love.
Really?
Researchers noted last year that one possible explanation may be, this is what I really think is true, that men tend to rely more on their significant others for emotional support and less likely to seek it outside that relationship.
Okay.
That really makes sense to me. I think that kind of rings true. A 2021 survey reported that men are significantly less likely than women to share their personal feelings or receive emotional support from a friend.
All right.
In other words, we put all of our eggs in your bucket.
That makes sense.
And
that makes sense.
when you're scurrying down the trail and eggs are flying out, it really bothers us.
And
it really
you're
hurts
sharing
us.
it with girlfriends,
We don't
and
share.
sisters
We don't.
and
Yeah,
other,
that's right.
other people.
I mean, you have in many ways. I guess it could
yeah.
be. It could be very healthy that women generally have those other outlets for emotional support. But for men, we don't. And this is just on the survey. I think it could be true of an awful lot of men. We don't tend to seek that emotional support
Gotcha.
outside of the most significant relationship.
Okay.
That is, you heard me say, that men are more crushed by the loss of that relationship.
Yeah.
Because we put so much into
Yeah.
this one thing.
Yeah.
And when it goes away, it can be crushing.
Sure.
We're much more sensitive
You're
than
so
we look.
tender.
We're
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
very. You can tell.
Yeah.
Very, very, very,
So
sensitive.
sensitive.
Very sensitive.
Yeah. I'll be more careful with your feelings from now on. Now, moving on.
Oh.
I do have something just for you. And this is going to be for a lot of people, but I thought of you when I first saw this because this is for grandparents, particularly new grandparents, how to be a good grandparent without alienating your children.
I could use these tips. I think
Well-
I have some ideas of what I should do, but
Okay.
But go right ahead.
I want to be clear. I don't think that you are particularly subject to alienating your children. So
Okay.
it's not like I'm expecting that or anything. And really, and ladies, don't be upset with me because I'm speaking of myself. When I was reading these things, I think a lot of these things might apply maybe more to women than to men. And this is all from Dr. Terry Apter. She's written a dozen books on family dynamics. Her latest is Grandparenting on Love and Relationships Across Generations. This was born of her own experience as well as interviews she conducted with 72 grandparents. Now, they were mostly grandmothers, but lots of grandfathers too, and step-grandparents too, because this applies to you if you're in that kind of relationship. She says one thing that is really different now is the perceived age of grandparents has changed since her parents became grandparents. Back then, studies categorized grandparents as old, out of date, rigid, set in their ways.
Set in their ways.
They said old in a lot. That could never be.
Said the word in olden times all the time.
None of that
Back
could
in the
ever
olden
be
days.
said of you. But that's not so anymore. Grandparents are getting younger and younger, not just chronologically, but we're doing more into our older age.
We're living
staying
longer.
more active, and quite frankly, often today, young parents need more help than our parents needed. Grandparents are called upon to take on a bigger role than they might have in what you might call the olden days.
That's true.
So here are a few tips for
Go.
those of you who are navigating these new relationships or maybe expecting to in the future. You have to expect generational differences of opinion. Times have changed. Things have changed. I remember I had 3 kids 3 years apart. The American Pediatrics Association recommended for each of them laying them down in a different way.
Oh, yeah,
One got
It
laid down on
changed,
his
yeah.
back. The next one, you got to lay down, push them
Never
up
do that.
against a
Always do
bolster
this.
and put them on their side all swaddled up. And another one was on their tummy. So you can imagine how things have changed in the 20, 25, or 30 years since you had your kids. So, let them have their, you don't know more than they do just because you are older than they are.
How about that?
Also, grandparents should accept their new non-status and avoid kind of getting your feelings hurt or, saying, well, I was only trying to help.
What does it mean, non-status? I don't know what you mean.
Well, you are not the
You're
parent.
Well,
You
no,
are not the
but-
parent. You are the
Yeah,
grandparent.
that's the joy of it. You don't want to be the
I
parent.
know that is for you, but I think some people kind of,
They
they've
wanna run
been
the
waiting
show?
for it for such a long time and
no,
they're so
no,
excited and they might kind of feel like, I really know how to do this, step aside.
Look, I
let me
raised
get
you.
in here and help. Yeah. So, but
Can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you the day when my grandson was born and I was there, and of course my son, the father of my grandson, is a twin, and so watching my son and my daughter-in-law learn to swaddle. And I thought I can really show you. I didn't say this, but it's like, dude, I had twins.
Okay.
You talk about learning how to swaddle.
Yeah.
You got to know how to swaddle if you got twins. So, but I just let the nurse came in and showed them, and I just back out of it and let them learn, and I've done my part.
That's exactly right. You don't want to take over. You
No.
want to give them the space to learn and respond. You can explain maybe why you did something a certain way, but always accept the parent's preference. Another thing, don't ever drop by unannounced, even if you're bringing food. Always wait for an invitation or at least ask if you can come visit. And if the answer is no, try not to be hurt. Always trying to keep those lines of communication open. And sometimes, this is for you,
Go
applies
ahead.
more to paternal grandparents because sometimes, a woman might be a little bit closer to her parents and she can let her guard down a little
Right.
bit more
Gotcha.
with her parents. But go ahead. I'm sorry. You wanted to say
I was going to say, you mentioned taking food. I had offered when Jamie and Katie and the baby, when John West, when they went home, I said, hey, let me bring you guys a meal. If you want to bring a meal, just let me know, and I'll go pick up your favorite Mexican whatever. And he said, no, not now because her sister's in town and blah, blah, blah. But how about on Sunday night? And I said, hey, great. Whatever works for you guys. Sunday night, great. I'll bring you dinner Sunday night. But then I noticed Sunday was the Super Bowl. And I said, hey, listen, buddy. I just noticed that's the Super Bowl. Might it be better if I brought like a late lunch that you then could warm up for dinner if you want? And so we worked it out.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't even think of going by without announcing.
I think you have an A+ so far. But here, another one of these tips: if you ever do feel left out or like you're not getting as much time with your grandchild or with the family as you'd like, talk about it. Talk about it with your child. So in your case, you'll talk about it with Jamie.
Okay.
And again, I would never expect this to be a problem for you. Talk about it with your kid. Don't ever say anything negative about their spouse.
Yep.
Just let them know, you're really excited excited about this and you want to spend more time, you want to be a part of things, how can you help? Not just, why aren't you letting me come over more, but what can I do to help? What can I do to make this easier for you, help you out? And then finally, be really clear about your boundaries too. This can be especially important for women. Sometimes it's assumed that a grandmother's role is going to be childcare, and maybe more of it than you have the time or the capacity for. So you have to be really careful about that. But also remember that there is the bonus of a significantly reduced risk of developing dementia for grandparents who take care of their grandchildren at least once a week. Yeah. So keep that in mind. But it should never be a should or you have to do it.
There was a thing recently, and it was. Gosh, I don't know what it was. It was something. It was some big event. It might have been Christmas. Yeah, well, it might have been Christmas. There was something where Jamie and Katie wanted to get away to a baby moon, like a honeymoon, a baby moon before the baby. Well, and they were doing it like back in October, and Katie wasn't feeling well. She got sick, and it was a bad time. So they canceled their plans of going to Boston for the weekend, or for a long weekend. They decided to do that, I think, over Christmas instead. And so I didn't know this until afterwards, but Jamie was like, "Hey, Pops, we're not gonna be around for Christmas. We're not going anywhere with any of y'all, and we're not gonna be with her side, or we're going to do our own thing." I said, "Hey, great,
Yeah.
And later it was like, "Hey, thanks so much for being understanding." And it didn't seem like much to me. I'm really more.
Pretty easygoing.
I'm pretty easygoing about this stuff. I mean, that's I've done my part, and I'm happy to. You want to drop the kid off? I'm happy to do anything you want me to do. Or you need help? Want me to come over and when we take the dog? Whatever you need.
Yeah,
I'll do that. But I'm not trying to elbow my way in. They got to learn their own things. And I remember in the first week, it was like, "Oh, these are really tough nights." It's like I hope you have an appreciation for your mother now, because you can imagine one kid feeding this, that, and the other, and you got two at the same time. So just I said, "Don't worry about it. It's going to work out." And the truth is, this time is going to go by so quickly.
It sure is.
This is only the first week. You're going to be okay, and you're going to look back and go, "Where did the time go?" I said, "Just enjoy it, as hard as it may seem to be able to enjoy it when times are tricky, but don't worry about it." So anyway, I think I did okay so far.
You did great. But for anybody else who would like to know more, again, it's Dr. Terry Apter, and the book is Grandparenting on Love and Relationships Across Generations.
Okay, there you go. WilderShow.com podcast. WilderShow.com podcast. WilderShow.com is where you find us. Podcast at WilderShow.com is how you contact us. We haven't talked about this in a while, but if you go to WilderShow.com, you can leave feedback in an audio way. You click on it there, and you can voice things, and we hope to incorporate some of those things, whether it's an idea, show topic, or whether you just want to talk about anything. You can do that there. Go to WilderShow.com. You'll see where to click when you get there. Again, podcast at WilderShow.com is the way to contact us. WilderShow.com podcasts drop Tuesdays and Fridays, 6 a.m. Central Time, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. And so rate, follow, subscribe, and share. Thank you for sharing. I see the numbers, and they are growing thanks to your sharing. So thanks for doing that. And we will see you next time. Da 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 da
da da